Hello. This lecture is on Sophocles' Oedipus Tyrannus. You should take a look at the attachment that I sent that has the outline of the lecture. You can follow it. It's a pretty clear outline of some of the key exchanges that are important in the play. So I've attached that. It says Oedipus Tyrannus 2005 notes. Um, that's just 15 years ago. I taught this. Actually, I taught this about 20 years ago, 22 years ago at Boston University for the first time when I taught there. And I taught this at Boston College and Ave Maria University, other places. So I've been teaching this for a long time. It's an old standby. Um, it's an amazing play. Um, I want to just say briefly, remind you that this play was part of a trilogy: Oedipus Tyrannus, um, Oedipus at Colonus, and then Antigone. We're going to be reading Antigone as well. Uh, believe Sophocles is known for almost 30 plays. Um, I might not have mentioned that the plays were put on. I did mention that they were put on as part of a religious festival, the festival to Dionysus, that the entire citizenry of Athens would be present at. Probably did not mention that it was part of a contest. So Greek tragedies and comedies would be put on stage, and the best play would be awarded, the best tragedy, the best comedy would be awarded. Sophocles, I believe, won over a dozen times. So he was, widely considered the greatest playwright of this period, around 430 to around 415 or 410 BC. Greek culture here. Just to put it in context, we have the great Athenian victory. I think was it 428 naval victory, and then the flowering of democracy appears in this entire century, the 5th century BC. The next century will see the rise of perhaps the greatest flowering of Greek culture, which is philosophy. Socrates and his student Plato is probably the greatest philosopher ever lived, and Aristotle. I do not think they are possible as cultural phenomena without the rise of drama like Aeschylus and like Sophocles, which we're reading right now. So, tremendously important part of Greek culture, these plays. Okay, it would be remiss of me if I did not mention at the very outset, in discussing Oedipus Tyrannus, the Freud's interpretation of Oedipus, which most of you all know. And it basically is that Oedipus dramatizes the secret desire that all males have to kill their father and marry their mother. And in some psychological drama, internal psychological drama, every child has to successfully move through killing their father, at least psychologically, and marrying their mother. Freud developed a similar complex for women called the Electra complex. That is presented in the Oresteia, which I've mentioned a number of times, by Aeschylus, which we're not reading. Freud's theories are interesting. Freud is probably the one of the writers I've studied more than any other writer. I have a list of about 5 writers that I've read a lot of over the years. Coleridge, Samuel Taylor Coleridge is one of them. Freud is another. Francis Bacon, I've read a great deal of. I find Freud's theories very challenging and interesting. But J.R. Tolkien is another, is up there in the top 5. Freud's theories are fascinating, challenging, insightful. I find this one to be not helpful. I think it's just not really true, maybe not even psychologically. My own theory about this is that Oedipus represents every human person's blindness to one's own limitations. Oedipus has to be, if the play was successful in Greek culture and continues to be read constantly in literature classes, it has to speak to some universal idea, and I think Oedipus represents our own sense of our own blindness to our own failures and our own limitations, and what it might take to come to grips with those limitations. So, he's a tragic figure, but again, a representation of human limits, which tend to be unacknowledged unless they're transgressed. I'm going to go through the play in a very detailed way, and go through various scenes, highlighting key ideas. I'll stop this lecture about an hour. I don't know if I'll finish, and I'll stop it at an hour, and then I'll pick it up, and if I'm not done, I'll continue with another shorter lecture. I think that's what I'll do. We'll see what happens. But I want to. The play opens with in the royal house of Thebes, right? Oedipus is the king. The doors open, and Oedipus walks through these great doors. The audience immediately would have recognized him as a tyrant, and would have feared him, and would have known that something bad was going to happen. Indeed, the story itself was well known among the Greeks. It's the handling of it. It's the handling of the story which is so magnificent by Sophocles, and what he does with. That's what I want to focus on. So I think it's important that we recognize that Oedipus emerges. All of the Theban people, elders, everybody is there, and Oedipus emerges here as a ruler and as a priest. This is really important. This is not acceptable. Rulers and priests are not positions that can be synthesized. He becomes a religious authority and a civic authority, and that combination makes him a tyrant, right? And they're coming there as suppliants to him. They're in supplication. He says a few things. Why have you come here pleading? At line 2. And then, my children, I am here, famous Oedipus. Immediately, why are you kneeling in supplication? I don't get the sense that he's saying that, get up. Why? It's not a rhetorical question. Why are you kneeling in supplication? It's a genuine question. Oh, you're kneeling here. Oh, why? I'm here to help you. I will help, he says. At line 12. Only a heartless man could bear to see such sorrow and not feel pity. I think it's important to recognize that he is genuinely concerned with them. That's not his problem. He's not being disingenuous. He thinks he can help them. He feels sorry for them. So he appears compassionate and confident that he's going to solve their problem. By the way, he will. He will. That's the great irony of it. He will by exposing himself as the cause of the problem. Although he doesn't know that right now. He's blind to that. That's what's so frightening. Immediately, everybody knows this in the audience. So to know the end is not to be, is not to spoil the story, but to enhance it. Okay, so the elder, Oedipus, master of my country, every age gathers at your altar. Right? So it's not only the young, it's the middle and the elders. And they come because of the plague. There's a plague, a pestilence that is beset the city. Okay. Now, very interesting point. Line 31. They say, we know that you are not a god. Okay, well, why would they say that? Why would they say, we know you are not a god? This seems like an odd thing to say, unless maybe they're worried that he does think he's a god, or that they're thinking of him as a god. They praise him, though. To the man who knows best the trials of life, for you understand divine power. He might not be a god, but he understands divine power. That's a little... I don't think a Greek can say that. They might recognize divine power, but to understand it, why do they say that? Because when Oedipus first came to Thebes, he saved them from a similar plague that could only be solved if the riddle of the Sphinx was solved. And the riddle of the Sphinx was this: what walks on 4 legs in the morning, on 2 legs in the afternoon, and on 3 legs in the evening? And the answer to that is a human being. By the way, Oedipus himself in Oedipus and Colonus, because he's blind, will be picking with a cane. That's the 3 legs. Elderly people have 3 legs, the cane. So Oedipus himself will suffer that condition. He solved the riddle of the Sphinx. They say, without any help, delivered us from despair. We could do nothing. We knew nothing. It is said that once you were helped by a god. We believed it, and you saved all our lives. Now, Oedipus, our master and greatest power, we are all in your care. We beg of you, come to our aid. Have you heard from a god, a man? Is there something that you understand what to do at such times? All of us trust your judgment. Save the city. Our country calls you its savior. You earned the title. They may not think of him as a god, but he's perilously close to it. Right? And again, he's earned it because he solved that riddle of the Sphinx. The last thing they say, the last thing the elder says is, if you want to rule as master of this land, you need men to master, not walls and ships. A nation of no one can only be nothing. So these lines will be repeated in Antigone. The point is, they're all dying. He better save them. Oedipus calls them children. My poor children. This is an older man he's talking to, a wise person. I understand the hope that brings you here. None of you can know the anguish that I feel, he says. And I think that's true. I think we should not discount his compassion. So he's already sent Creon, his wife's brother, to the Pythian oracle, Apollo's shrine at Delphi. Um, and remember, and Creon will bring back word of what to do. Remember the oracle at Delphi? Know thyself, because that's a key point. All right, Creon emerges. Creon returns. The oracle's message at line 97: drive out defilement nurtured in your land. No longer must be purged. The purge is banishment or else death for death. The cause is murder, and blood guilt storms over our city. All right. So the cause of the plague is that, and it's been 20 years now since this has happened, I think. Something like 20 years. The killer of the old king, King Laius, has not been punished. And the oracle asked for punishment at 100, right? Because no one bothered to seek justice. Somebody kills your king and you just let it go, right? Not a good thing. So the plague here, we should recognize, is a kind of metaphor or image of the failure to exact justice. The crops are failing. The meaning of this is not literal, I think, but metaphorical. So they've got to exact justice for what's happened. Oedipus. Oh, okay. By the way, what everybody knows in the audience is that Oedipus is the one who killed Laius. Oedipus was on his way from Corinth to Thebes and met Laius on a crossway. By the way, it was prophesied to Laius that he would die this way, and Oedipus. so it's a strange thing that doesn't recognize it. But he's the one who killed Laius. This is why this is so terrifying what he says. Then this is on page 6 at line 132. Then I will start again. I will see it exposed. You are right. Apollo is fully justified to remind us of our obligations to the dead. Watch as I join the fight for this land as the gods' true instrument of vengeance. Do you want to be God's true instrument of vengeance? Terrifying. This is something that Oedipus should take very seriously. And he's just taking it on. Right? When you become God's instrument of vengeance, you're going to become vengeance. That vengeance you better watch out for. It could destroy you. Dangerous thing to be. So he says this. Oedipus says this: I have my own reasons for driving out this infection. The killer, whoever it may be, could kill again and lay those deadly hands on me. As I serve this cause, so I serve myself. All right. He's the king. Laius was the king. Whoever killed the king might kill him again. But this brilliant irony: as I serve this cause, so I serve myself. Right? So what's interesting here is that everything that Oedipus says, we have to see the irony in. Everything is double-edged. Right? It's not only for the common good, it's out of self-interest. Right? To save his role as the king. What else is true about this is his unswerving desire to discover the killer. It will reveal himself as the killer, and will reveal himself as a human being. The irony of that is buried, though, in the tyrant and the tyrant's demand for justice. The tyrant's claim to be taking vengeance on by himself, right, and exacting that. It will that he will be the instrument of vengeance. It will fall on himself. So there's the irony. So the chorus from lines 151 to 213. I'm going to summarize this. Remember, the chorus plays the role of commentary. And it's interesting that the basic idea, the chorus asks all the gods to strike Ares. Ares is the god of war. What's war doing here? War in the form of civil unrest, perhaps brought about by regicide, the killing of the king. We will see, by the way, that that's the offshoot of this. The language of the chorus is beautiful, and its diction is poetic. And remember that in a Greek tragedy, the chorus would have chanted this. Everybody would have chanted this. This would have been accompanied by a lyre. So it's like a song. And it's in the form of strophe, antistrophe, back and forth. Strophe asserts something, antistrophe asserts a response. Frequently, in some sort of dialogue. Sometimes they play upon each other. Sometimes they work in opposition to each other. So 190 is a pretty good summary of this. Blazing Ares, god of war, comes against me now. With no bronze sword or shield, he scorches me and the shouts rise about him. Oedipus, remember, is going to seek the truth. He begins to interrogate people. So what I want to suggest is that he takes on the role of almost every element of a court case. He becomes a prosecutor, an interrogator of the prosecutor. He'll become a witness. He'll become a defense counselor. He'll become the jury. He'll become the judge. Now, he wants to know. I think we should really be clear about this. He's an outsider, so he's going to raise questions. Remember, he's the one who did the killing, so he wants to know what was going on before. He gets caught up in his own zeal here on page 10. And as he starts questioning, he starts getting angry. One of Oedipus's problems is his rashness, his anger. He claims that, remember what the punishment would be from Apollo: banishment, exile, or death. Right? So he says, if somebody confesses to this crime, I will only exile them. They get caught, and they will be banished and cursed. Oedipus doesn't have any power to curse anybody. He's a king. So he'll join with the oracle to curse. So now he's aligned himself with oracular power. Now this is deeply ironic. Some of the important lines of this entire play, and you should write these down, especially if you're writing about Oedipus. 244 to 251. So I stand side by side with the god. Do you see how slowly he's up with the gods? He's now side by side with the gods. He's worked himself up into such a frenzy. Fighting for the rights of the murdered man. This is deeply ironic since he's the murderer. I damn the killer. He's just damned himself. Whoever he may be, an unknown man or one of many, may he suffer and die, pain beyond pain. I damn myself. This is funny now. If I should come to know that he shares my hearth and home, then I call this curse to fall upon me. Right? It's not only that he shares his home, it's himself. The beautiful irony of this. Again, he's actually cursing himself and damning himself. This is devastating and a tremendous insight about human nature again, that the Greeks are interested in portraying and dramatizing. Sophocles has done a marvelous job. He's blind to this. Don't we frequently do this? Some of the things that we're most culpable of, we tend to blame others for. So not so far off the mark in terms of human nature, I think. He's every man. He's every woman in some important way. It's just that I think my own position is that no one does this. Who kills their father and sleeps with their mother? No one. It's so unusual that it's got to be a form of representation of something else. No one can identify it, but everybody can identify with it's so extreme, but it encompasses all other forms of blindness. That's the way I read this. Freud is barking up the wrong tree here. He's right in some fundamental way, but wrong about the content. Okay, he goes on. Line 256. It was not right that the crime went unpurged. Your king, the best of men, was cruelly killed, but you sought no answers. Now I rule. I have the authority that once was his. I own his bed and make his wife mine. The terrifying irony of it. Because that's his mother. Now he goes on and even says something even funnier and more ironic. My children planted the same mother as his. Could have forged a bond of blood between us. If fate had not fallen and he had not died childless. Of course, it's not true. He didn't die childless. Oedipus is his child. And they do form a bond of blood. Oedipus is not only their father, he is their brother, half-brother. This is crazy and almost humorous, right? And insane, right? So it's got to be the representation, the meaning of this has got to go beyond its content, I think. His cause is mine, and I will fight for him as if he were my very own father. It is his father. Again, how brilliant all of this is, and how ironic, how blind he is, and how it's all pointing back to himself. Right. Now, he goes further. Those who disobey me be damned by the gods. This curse or something far worse will doom you to destruction, he says. This is chilling. That's the final curse. He's cursed himself now. He condemns himself. It's laughable and funny and terrifying. So, and again, I pointed this out in the previous lecture. Aristotle claimed that Oedipus Tyrannus is recognition all the way through. Everybody's seeing this. Everybody knows the end. Everybody's seeing this and recognizing this. And some point, it's going to come home to the audience. Okay. So this play moves very quickly. Tiresias, the blind prophet, who we've seen in the Odyssey, right, emerges. And Oedipus welcomes him. We should not think of this as welcome as phony. 300. Tiresias, great visionary, mystic teacher, medium to other worlds. Though you are blind, I know you sense the sickness that infected the city. You can deliver us. You can keep us safe. There's reverence here for his prophetic uh, abilities. He's gotten no help from the citizens of Thebes. He's going to have to turn to a prophet. He asks him to interpret the signs. Use every part of your prophet's craft. Save yourself, your city. Save me. Again, that's ironic, right? Tiresias knows the truth. He saw Oedipus walk in. He saw who he was, but he must look exactly like his father. They didn't figure this out. I mean, of course they did. Or they did? I mean, it's crazy, right? Is a hateful thing to know. When nothing can be gained from knowledge, I saw it clearly, but forced it from my thoughts. How else could I be here? Right? So Tiresias is already known, and now he's being forced to speak. He says, stop your investigation. I've nothing more to say. And now the argument pivots. Notice how Oedipus goes immediately from reverence to anger. Nothing, damn you. You could make the coldest stone burn with rage. No, only you, Oedipus. Only you who turns on a dime. Whenever anything comes in your way, you get angry, Oedipus. Tiresias, you condemn my temper, yet fail to see where your own dwells. Instead, you blame me. Typical, right? Blaming the other. This is another thing we frequently do, right? Blame others for our problems. So Oedipus then immediately accuses Tiresias. You had a hand in this. You were part of the plot. It was you. And if you'd had eyes in your head, you would have murdered the man yourself. Tiresias is like, okay, I've had enough. Now I'm being accused of being part of the plot. No, Oedipus, you. He's not going to come out and claim it straightforwardly, explicitly. You are this land's defiler. You are the curse. Tiresias says at line 353. Oedipus keeps pushing him, and Tiresias finally says, I say that the murder you seek is you. I say you can't comprehend it, he says. Living in abomination, intimate with nearest and dearest, failing to see the evil. Right, so notice how this dialogue unfolds. Questioning Tiresias. Tiresias tries to remain silent. By the way, that is a principle in the court of law. The great Thomas More, when he was brought before King Henry VIII to ask if he agreed with divorce, Henry VIII, More refused to talk, because even though he disagreed with Henry VIII, silence is tacit approval. You're not forced to speak. You should never be forced to speak, and you're not in a democracy. Right? You don't have to impugn yourself. So Tiresias tries to remain silent. Oedipus accuses Tiresias, and then Tiresias accuses Oedipus. All right. The final words at 371, your ears and your mind are as blind as your eyes. First, Tiresias was the great figure who could see everything. Now he's blind. That image of blindness is important. Right? Tiresias says it. You poor fool, the same abuse you hurl at me, they'll soon enough be hurling back at you. No, Oedipus, you're the blind one. Okay, so the blindness is extremely important in this play. Oedipus can see perfectly well. He's just blind to who he is, deeply blind to almost every aspect of himself. He doesn't realize how to control his temper. He doesn't see anything wrong with it. He's rash, doesn't bother to correct it. He's prideful. Of course, pride by its very definition, covers over pridefulness. You don't think you're prideful if you're prideful. So all of these hubris, right, this idea of pure pride is really a form of blindness. Remember, Odysseus was blind to the fact that was unaware of his own pride until much later, until he had to suffer for it. The same is true here. Blindness and hubris go hand in hand. What are you blind to? You're blind to the fact that you're dependent upon the gods. You're blind to the fact that you're not a god. You don't have power over everything. Oedipus thinks he has power, he can control everything because he solved the riddle of the Sphinx. We'll see, he also thinks he thinks he avoided the oracle. The blindness here again, really important. He plays upon that idea of the Sphinx, right? Of solving the riddle of the Sphinx. He picks up on that. Says, you, Tiresias, are the great prophet. You saw no omens. You made no revelations. There was no divine inspiration. You knew nothing. Then I came. Ignorant Oedipus. That's a joke, right? You think I'm ignorant, right? Ignorant Oedipus. I silenced her by using my mind, not signs from the sky. So now prophecy is being attacked. And Oedipus is assuming that he knows everything. His own natural knowledge brought about his solving the riddle of the Sphinx. And that's what he's going to rely on. He thinks he's smarter than everybody. And we'll see again why that's true. So Tiresias says something very important at line 4:12 and following. You ridicule me and call me blind, but your eyes cannot see your own corruption or where you live and just who you live with. Do you even know your parents? You, an oblivious enemy to all your kith and kin, both living and dead. Idolatry, your mother and father, treading the terror, will hound you out of this land, and then your keen eyes will see only darkness. Tiresias is prophesying Oedipus's coming blindness. You thought that fortune had sailed you to safe haven, but you cannot perceive the deluge of disasters that will be the measure of you and your children. No man will ever suffer as much as you. And yeah, I would say that this is a form of suffering. To have killed your father, married your mother, and had 4 children, which are both your brothers and your children, that's just not a good situation. Who can recover from something like that? So the thing goes on. Aren't you the greatest? Tiresias begins to ridicule him. Are you not the greatest solver of riddle? Insult me there, and you'll discover just how great I am. Yet your blessing proves to be your curse. So all of the great achievements of Oedipus will come crashing down and will curse him very shortly. Again, the suffering is self-imposed. At least caused by Oedipus's own agency. I'll go into the deep problem of fate and free will here at the end. It's irresolvable, I think. But there's a deep question about the nature of freedom here that is raised, I think, at the end. So he tells him that he's the object of his own manhunt, and then he prophesies Oedipus actually foretells what he looks like in Oedipus at Colonus. This is the figure of Oedipus as he's picking his way through that play. Hopeless, a blind man who once could see, a beggar who before was rich, led by a stick, picking his way across lands unknown. All will be seen. So Oedipus will eventually be revealed to himself. By the way, he will be the one to do it. So this moves on into page 22, where Oedipus now accuses Creon, and this is, of course, crazy. So, I'm going to skip the chorus, jump to page 25, which brings in Creon again, trying to defend himself. The argument he makes here at line 588 is a very good one. By the way, if you're going to write about Creon in Antigone, you should pay attention to this, because Creon becomes the tyrant in Antigone. Why should I want to be Tyrannus? I'd be insane. I already do as I please. I have everything from you and nothing to fear. As a ruler, I'd have to do things against my will. But the power I have now is exactly to my taste. Why do I find tyranny more attractive? Right? So what he's saying here is that he gets everything he wants because he's Oedipus's brother-in-law. Why should he wish to be tyrant? And he got everything he wanted because he was Laius's son. Why would he kill his father? It makes no sense whatsoever. So keep this in mind, because that attitude does in fact play into Creon. He's blind to his own he's blind to his own potential of becoming a tyrant. The fact that he wants everything and can get it without doing anything about it shows that he's susceptible to being a tyrant. He says, "Don't presume me guilty without proof," Creon says. And Oedipus keeps pushing it. There's a very interesting exchange at the bottom of page 26. Creon says, "And you could be wrong. Nevertheless, I must rule." We have a moment here of insight by Oedipus. He's forced into this position of seeking the answer. And he seems genuinely upset. Oh, my city, my city. One could read this as genuine concern. Creon recognizes a hint of ownership. Creon says, "I belong in this city. It's not only yours." There's the tyrant being exposed. So Costa hears all of this. He hears her brother fighting with I'm sorry, he wasn't Laius's son. He's Laius's brother-in-law, and Jocasta comes out and scolds them. Why are you fighting in front of the whole city? And Creon says, "Sister, your husband Oedipus wants to throw me out of my own country and have me put to death." And Jocasta says, you have to accept him. He has sworn before the gods. Oaths call for reverence. So do I, and so do the people standing before you. So, you can't keep this up. And the chorus says he's a part of your family and under his own curse. You should not disgrace him with a groundless charge. Oedipus then says something very interesting at line 658. "Then you should know that what you want will mean my exile or death." He's speaking truthfully, right? If the truth comes out, exile or death. That's what Apollo asked for. But what he's saying is that if he doesn't find the truth, then remember he said that if he doesn't find the truth, he should be exiled or killed. So either way, Oedipus is in trouble. So his own edict has cursed him. And notice that this is what happens when you start accusing people, start cursing people. The curse can come back and fall against you. Frequently does. It's always a bad idea to curse anybody. You curse yourself generally. So Jocasta's like, what's going on here? She starts to get involved, right? The Oedipus says, I am guilty of murdering Laius. Jocasta begins to dismiss oracles. She should just be quiet here, right? Just be quiet. Oh, don't. Of course, what she's dismissing here is the oracle that foretold that Oedipus, her son, would kill Laius and marry her. She said, don't believe in that. An oracle came to Laius once. I won't say from Apollo, it came from priests. So she's fudging this here. Apollo, yeah, but maybe not the priests. Well, I'm sorry, in Greek culture, the priests are representatives, interpreters of the oracles. The oracle itself comes through human beings there. And the oracle is that Laius would give birth to a son. The son would kill Laius and marry me. But that didn't happen. Why? Because Laius was killed by strangers at a place where 3 roads meet. That's the story. And our son, he didn't last 3 days. Laius yoked his feet and had him thrown away by other people into a wilderness of mountains. That's the way Astucer charts the truth. Don't trust them. The God knows what's needed. The God himself will speak when he sees fit. This is all the information that Oedipus needs to go, oh no, it's me. He killed a man where 3 roads meet. His feet were yoked. He still limps. He still limps. They didn't recognize the limp. He still limps because his ankles were yoked to a chain. Guess what? The same oracle came to him. He was told the same oracle. What you're telling me shakes my soul, sends my mind reeling one way than the other. That's the effect of Jocasta's words. And then, so they go on. Oh, I thought you said this. Yeah, that's what I said. It confirms everything. Right. What did Laius look like? Oh, he was dark, about your size. Jocasta didn't recognize that this looked like Laius. Oh gods, no. I think I've cursed myself. Called down calamity I never knew. I should have known. I guess that's one of the things you should. So, he should have known. This was so obvious. He should have known. So what's interesting is that we might be blind to things, but these are things we should try to figure out. What do you mean? It scares me to look at you. A terrifying thought. What if the blind prophet can see? It will all be exposed. If you can tell me just one more thing. Was he traveling with a small entourage? Or at the head of a column, she tells him, oh, I start to see. Notice the play on words. It will all be exposed. Oedipus, that word exposed, is the word used to describe what Laius and Jocasta tried to do to him. what you do to an unwanted child, usually with some sort of defect, or older people who can no longer take care of themselves. You expose them. You don't kill them. You put them out in the wilderness and an animal will come and eat them. It's called exposure. Oedipus was exposed. So the play, it will all be exposed, right, is a play on that. Oedipus, now I start to see. He begins to recognize that he was the one who killed us. He wants a witness, an eyewitness. I have to see this man for myself. Notice that Oedipus's desire for the truth is a powerful engine here and is one of his great characteristics. It's a virtue. Oedipus now unfolds his own story, which is articulated at line 771 all the way down to 833. So he was born to parents, or at least he thinks, in Corinth, right? Some drunken man says at a party, by the way, you were adopted. He goes to his mother and father, and they were furious. But Oedipus doesn't believe it. He goes to Apollo, and Apollo shunned him, denied his questions. But he also revealed something. He said, I would mate with my mother and reveal a race too vile to stand in the sight of man. He said I would kill my father. Right? So what does Oedipus do here? He runs. He runs from Corinth. I travel to a place where 3 roads meet. And he describes exactly the scene of Laius's killing. But if this stranger bled the blood of Laius, stranger, he's referring to himself. He's a stranger to himself. But if this stranger bled the blood of Laius, who could be as contemptible as I? What man could be more heaven-hated, condemned by a curse called down by no one else but me? Right? He begins to realize everything is fitting, right? Everything is fitting. I'll stop and ask the question. Why does Oedipus run? There's a famous scene in Greek mythology, I can't remember where it is, but a hunting scene where the king and the person who protects, right, are hunting. They all have spears and they're in a circle, and the boar is in the middle, and they're all in a circle. All these guys have javelins, and the man who is meant to protect the king kills the king. Now the question is, why? Wouldn't he be aside of the king? No. He would be at the opposite to watch anybody else who might want to kill the king. If they turn their spears at him, he can, from that vantage point, see them all and throw the spear at the person trying to kill the king. That's his job, is to protect. But what happened was that he missed the boar straight across and killed the king. That's how the counselor kills the king. So if you're given a prophecy that you're gonna kill your father and marry your mother, and you think that they're there in Corinth, you wouldn't leave. You just say, look, I'm not going to kill my father and marry my mother. I could only do that by mistake. It's absurd, right? So what's interesting is that his attempt to flee the oracle and run away from the oracle is what leads him immediately to fulfilling the oracle. So the tremendous irony of all of this, right? If Oedipus had accepted the oracle, simply accepted the oracle, and going back to Corinth, it's very likely that he never would have done this. So you see the tremendous power of the way Sophocles has set this up. One could ask the question, given who Oedipus was, that this was the only thing he could do. He doesn't think. He's rash. He thinks he can outwit the oracle. By the way, just like Jocasta and Laius thought they could outwit the oracle, by trying to outwit the oracle, they made it come to fruition. Think about that for a moment. It's because they both believed the oracle and attempted to avoid the oracle that they did it. What way out of this? Well, how about reflection? How about reflection? If I know who my son is, am I going to marry him? No. So you see the amazing way this whole thing has been set up, right? The oracle pronounces something that feeds into the deep weaknesses of the characters, Laius and Jocasta, and Oedipus turns out to be exactly like them. Both believing and disbelieving the oracle, both thinking the oracle is true and trying to outrun it. This is a contradiction. And it's met with a harsh fate. Jocasta, starts in. Oh, they have the same. They had the same. They had the same oracle, right? And she says at line 853, Laius' death was not the one that was foretold. He did not die by his son's plan. That wretched child never killed him. He was dead himself long before the murder. So much for soothsayers. After that, they'll never have me looking for answers here, there, and everywhere. So I'm going to end this lecture right there, and I will pick up the next lecture right at that spellbinding moment where Jocasta announces that, in fact, they avoided the oracle, and in fact, this will be the one thing that will confirm that the oracle was true and that Oedipus was the one who did this. So I'll end there.